How will if it's at
5. It's a push from it.
You having a laugh?
No, it was a push.
I'm not sure that was a push because if it...
Thanks to the precise clarity of the current rules of snooker, I can tell you this definitely was a foul, and at the same time I can also tell you it certainly wasn't. But if we slow shots down enough, we can see exactly what happens, even if the balls are really close together. Slowing things down allows you to see far more, like how the balls don't just rattle in the pockets, they bounce and float from side to side, and usually jump away quite high above the bed of the table. At this slower speed we can see exactly how kicks affect the shot, as well as how the cue ball spins across the table. But first let's get back to Ronnie and his slightly controversial foul. The rules of snooker say a push shot is a prolonged or double hit of the cue ball. This usually happens when the object ball's in close proximity and the shot's being played square on. It's usually fairly obvious when this happens in real time, because whatever spin's put on the cue ball, it still runs on at full speed, and this looks unnaturally fast. Ronnie would have been aware of this, but crucially he was playing the shot at an angle, meaning the cue ball had space to run away before he struck it a second time. So you can see from this that it obviously wasn't a foul.
But if you really slow it down, you can see technically it was a foul.
The only problem is everything we need to see happens in between these two frames, which we don't have, and it's impossible to recreate it perfectly. But we can work it out, because if tip, cue ball and object ball are all touching, this is considered to be a push shot and a foul.
And a lot of this was down to the type of shot he was playing and exactly where he was striking the cue ball.
If you want to get more spin on the cue ball, it's often suggested you strike it with less of a sudden hit, and instead try to guide the cue ball through, contacting it for as long as possible to gain maximum spin.
But it turns out that might be completely the wrong way of looking at it. Striking the cue ball in a smoother, prolonged way doesn't increase the spin. The spin increases the contact time. The closer to the centre you hit the cue ball, the more instantaneously it disappears. But the closer to the edge, any edge you get of the cue ball, the more the tip struggles to grip the ball, and the more it increases the contact time. You can actually see this.
With this side-by-side shot, the cue ball doesn't accelerate so fast away from the tip when you hit it close to the edge. I'm filming all of these shots at 240 frames a second, and when I strike the cue ball close to the centre, it's only actually on my tip for one individual frame. However, when I strike the cue ball a lot lower, it's almost on my tip for 3 individual frames. So the spin Ronnie played the shot with would have meant everything would have been touching at the same time, and it would have been a foul, but this doesn't seem very workable or fair.
But the rules of snooker allow for this, and say if the balls are really close together and you're striking a fine edge, then this is completely fine. But then you've got the problem. What exactly is a fine edge?
Ronnie had to be playing the thinnest shot I'd ever seen a push called on, but it was still caught a ball, and that's hardly a fine edge. But the next problem is, what's the difference? I play a push here, but it's a fine contact, so I'd get away with it, and the cue ball doesn't do anything weird. But it also doesn't react weirdly on this shot, where I'm playing it a lot thicker, maybe more than quarter ball. Ronnie's shot may not even have been a simultaneous contact between tip, cue ball and object ball, but if it was, you'd have to leave it up to the referee to decide if it's thin enough.
Which is annoying because it's one of the few parts of the game that's open to interpretation.
Fortunately, this didn't affect the result of the frame, as Ronnie won it soon after with 2 good pots, but who knows, the next time it comes up, it might be a lot more crucial. Something else that can have a big effect on the result of a frame is a bad contact, so let's have a look at the causes of kicks.
But before we do, we're just going to find Godfrey from Limpopo, South Africa, which is in there. It's generally accepted that kicks are caused by something getting in between the cue ball and the object ball, like chalk or dirt.
This usually increases the grip, like here for example, the cue ball actually ran up the side of the object ball. The extra friction makes the object ball straighten up and can cause both balls to bounce. It even affects screw shots because the spinning cue ball actually lifts the object ball into the air, slowing it down and reducing the spin on the cue ball.
They're most noticeable on slower shots, where you're expecting the cue ball to smoothly run through or smoothly screw back.
Whereas straight stun shots are hardly affected because the balls just bounce a little bit more than normal.
On a powerful shot where the cue ball's likely to be bouncing a little bit, they actually have more of an effect and send the cue ball further into the air. But you don't notice it so much because you're already expecting a slightly bad reaction.
There isn't a shot you can play that's immune to kicks. They can come at any time, but there are some shots where it seems more crucial. The only thing you can do is keep the balls clean and try using some new chalk, although that isn't going to completely eliminate the problem. So instead, let's look at spin a little bit more.
But before we do any more, we're just going to find Sebastian from Zielona Góra, Poland, which is about there, I think.
So what do you need to know to be able to play a shot with a greater amount of spin? And what can slow motion show us that's going to allow us to get a greater reaction out of the cue ball?
Well, to start off with, hopefully fairly obviously, you want to be striking closer to the edge of the ball and smoothly following through. But slow motion shows us there's more to it than that.
And that's that the cue ball spin only has an effect on the shot when it's in contact with the bed of the table. If you watch the shot on the left, the fact that it's on the table for longer makes it accelerate faster.
But if the cue ball comes away from the bed of the table even just a little bit, that's going to have a big effect on the way it reacts.
Inertia basically means that something travelling at speed is likely to carry on travelling at speed, even if it makes contact with a solid object. But if the cue ball jumps in the air, then the spin can't take effect and it won't continue to run forward as efficiently. The cue ball also loses rotation speed during this time. This isn't so much when it's in the air because there's very little friction, but the bounces actually slow it down quite a bit. And if you're trying to put backspin on the cue ball, it actually starts travelling in the wrong direction until it makes contact with the bed of the table. So for maximum spin, you want to avoid bouncing.
But in certain circumstances, making the cue ball bounce can actually be very helpful.
By bouncing the cue ball very slightly here, I'm actually delaying the spin, and this causes it to arc across the bed of the table.
As long as you remember that the harder you play the shot and the higher it bounces, the more likely it is the pocket's going to spit the object ball back out again.
The balls don't look like they jump anywhere near as high in regular speed, or sometimes they don't even look like they're jumping at all, but quite often they leave the bed of the table and they're always bouncing a little bit across it, especially when they're played at speed. The thing I found surprising is sometimes when you miss a shot, the balls don't stay on the table like this. When you get really close, they're actually over the lip of the pocket, effectively inside it, flying from jaw to jaw.
I think we can all ignore the fact I hit the pink there, right?
Something else slow motion allowed me to see was the flexibility of the cushions. The cue ball knocks the red into the cushion a little bit here, allowing the space for it to get out the way and avoid a double kiss. And here I can't actually see the red I'm hitting, so I push it through the cushion. But how do the cushions spin the balls?
When you've got a shot like this in snooker, it's more likely to go in off the far jaw than the near jaw. And surprisingly, this all has to do with spin.
It's really difficult to see this, but the cushion actually slows the left side of the ball down here, and that makes the cue ball spin to the right, and it's this right-hand spin that's going to keep it out of the pocket. And this is even more effective the harder you play it. And it seems to be why you can't ever seem to pot the balls off the near cushion. But what happens when the balls are actually on the cushion?
Because it appears if you want the ball to run directly along the cushion, you don't want to hit it and the cushion at the same time. You actually want to hit the cushion slightly first.
This goes against everything I've ever been told, and I don't have enough evidence yet to prove it, but it seems like you want to hit the cushion very slightly before you hit the object ball, and this seems to knock the ball down the cushion every single time. I'll have to have a better look at this in the future. Something else I also want to have a better look at is how the cue vibrates as you play the shot, but unfortunately my camera isn't quite good enough to show this, as I can only do 240 frames a second, and I'd need something a lot better, but they cost a lot of money, so that might have to wait a while. But while you wait, why not have a look at these two videos where I'm trying to clear the table from a snooker player's point of view. And remember, don't just watch, play, and make the commitment to becoming a better player by subscribing to the channel and visit the website. See you later.